Hey everyone, this is Austin Schur here with We Write About Music, and today I'm thrilled to have back on again Win of Winchester 7 and the Runners. The band has another beautiful record on their hands. It's called The Waking Giant, and I'm super excited to talk to them all about it. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this. How are you? What's going on?
I'm pretty good. Thanks for having me. We're excited too.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure. It's been a little bit since we last talked, but the music has been pumping out and it's been fantastic.
Well, thank you. We worked pretty hard on this one, so I'm
Yeah, I
pretty
can
excited to
tell.
see it come out.
No, the
Took a
final
little longer.
product,
There's a lot more
yeah.
going in.
Hey, listen, there is nothing bad with, taking your time to put out a record. I'd rather you take your time for the quality to be there instead of rushing through it. So I
Yeah.
completely understand. Um, got a bunch of things I want to talk to you about. First thing is
Okay.
though is I think on anyone's first listen of this record, they're going to find that it's bright, it's vibrant, it's upbeat, instrumentally, it's just like it's such a beautiful thing. But who is in charge of actually writing the lyrics for this?
Well, thanks. I think I like to believe that I am,
You'd
but
like to
oftentimes,
believe?
yeah, I usually come in with the rough anyway, and then at some
Okay,
point, as like we workshop it, they'll make some suggestions, and there's a turn of phrase, or something doesn't quite work out, and then sometimes during the recording process, something seems like it's going to be perfect, but as you start to deliver,
yeah,
there's some changes that happen kind of in flight, and
of
that's always
course.
kind of exciting because you just go, "That's a good one. We'll keep that."
Nice. Well, okay, in that case, then what are these stories about? Like, are they direct things that happen in your life, or they're just, off
No.
the cuff remarks?
So the last album had a bit of a, you know, concept album thing to it. We were like, we're gonna try to make a theme for a cozy
Right.
mystery, be a murder mystery, some conspiracy, and won't that be fun? And after we got done, we were just like, man, that's terrible because after you're done making it, you keep having to think of other stories about the same topic. So by the time you
True.
get to the end of the record, you're like, I'm sick of the story. So
Okay.
what else do I tell? So we started in on talking about what to do with this one, and it just seemed that everything that we read and everything that we were going to had something to do with AI. And there was a story that Jack had written a while ago, when thought maybe he'd take a turn at being an author, which don't tell him, but it wasn't very good. But the
I won't say
idea
anything, I
was
promise.
the idea
Okay.
was pretty good. He just had this idea of what if people were in a VR world for so long they kind of forgot they were there.
Yeah.
So the way things happen is the way things happen. And I always thought that was an interesting idea. So then one night it struck me that perhaps if you took that and a little bit of the AI and tied it together, wouldn't that be cool? And how might that work? And that gave birth to the concept that became another concept album.
Yeah.
But this one was turned out easier to write because it was a little bit more rich of a story. It wasn't just who killed who framed who.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more tangible in how we as a society are reacting to uh, new technology revolutions like AI. And in
Yeah.
this case, we had this idea of there will be this AI world, and the guy who's going to fund it is going to also have other investments, and of course, one of them has something to do with AI. So, wouldn't it be cheaper than hiring a bunch of administrators to run the thing if we just had the AI do it? We'll tell it what's good and what we want to have happen, and they'll
Sure.
just kind of be the admin of the place, and everybody will go in and they'll get to enjoy themselves. And in this way, the investor thought we'll market it to the doom preppers and the
Yeah.
retirees and the people that want to just be in VR. And won't that be cool? Because they can all find what they're looking for. They can all be a virtual, like, kind of self that they aren't really, but they'd like to be. And if they want to change how they look, they can do that. So at any one point, you're young, vibrant, and beautiful. And you want to change something, go ahead. You just pay some credits and mess around with that, and you feel
Yeah.
no pain while the body stays in some kind of secure life support sort of thing. And what a great way to go.
I mean, honestly, that's kind of a concept in its own, but it's a lot more open-ended because I
Yeah,
feel it's also uncharted territory. We're such at the beginning of this whole AI thing and ChatGPT and just kind of figuring out what to do with it and the capabilities, you
Yeah.
writing about it is, commentary on the whole subject. And the fact
Yeah,
that you
that's where
actually
we
put
wanted
you
to
put
put
it to
it, yeah.
use, which is insane to me. Like, sometimes because it's tough because in my opinion, and I might
Uh-huh.
have said this last time, so many people, they just they don't care what you're saying. They listen to music for the way that it makes them feel, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, oh, I want to hear this love story or this breakup story or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They don't care because they don't know you on a personal level. So what difference does it make if you have, a computer write these lyrics?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, I know there's a channel out there, like Rick Beato,
Mhm.
and he goes ahead and talks about, the Rihanna's last album, and it's a hit. She's talented, but the lyrics are crap.
Yeah, because
So as he's
no one cares.
nobody
No one
cares because it's
cares.
such so damn catchy.
Yeah,
But I just kind of grew up and cut our teeth on things where the lyrics mattered. So
yeah,
it didn't necessarily matter that you knew every one. Sometimes we mangled them, and that was just fine.
right.
But, when you read the lyrics on the liner page or you read the lyrics on someplace else, it was nice to imagine what they meant.
Of
And
course.
one of my favorite things to do is always, we have a good rooting and appreciation for the Beatles. So for
Yeah.
me, that idea of being able to have things that could mean more than one thing is something I always try to put into the
No,
lyrics.
that's completely reasonable. Um, and yeah, it's like you said on the Rihanna thing. No one cares. It barely matters. People who listen to this, 99% of them don't know who you are or even what you look like. And it's just
Right.
like, for me, I mean, listen, I'm a lyrics person and I've got a whole massive vinyl collection where I do the same with the liner notes, but it's a different time and it's a different era.
It
So if you're
is.
not, yeah,
So we just kind of were like, on the last one, we felt like it, it worked, but it was a little narrative heavy.
sure.
So on this one, we were like, okay, well, maybe make it a little bit more of a personal experience. So rather than worrying about characters and plot, we'll just go how people are reacting to this thing. And there's a little bit of narrative here and there. We got the guy who's the investor
Sure.
and how he's going to pitch, and we got the how the developers reacting to it, and we even have the AI itself, like going ahead and trying to sell itself about how
Yeah.
you should just go ahead and disassociate with me.
Right.
But
No, man, I
al-
love that so much. I really
thanks.
do
But
love
along the way,
it.
there's haves and have-nots. So we
Yeah,
talked about that a lot, and that I think
totally.
was very relatable.
So your last record was Heart of the Golden Mystics, and again,
Yeah.
concept record for anyone that hasn't listened to it, and I recommend listening to it. But this one does feel not drastically different on the instrumental, and it's still very much got like the soul of the band, but at least lyrically and just like in its overall tone, it's different. From
Yeah, it
recording
was a
that
conscious
into
choice.
into sort of transferring, creating the blueprints for this one, is there anything that you learned in the studio or just like general tips that you're like, I want to carry this over to the new record?
Oh my gosh, yeah. We're doing that all the time, every time. Every time we set out to do something new, it's always a matter of what haven't we tried, and what else
Yeah.
does this thing need? And that experimentation, I think, fuels a lot of what we do. But there are a couple things to your point that on this record really did prove different. One of them was it was the first time we ever met our mix engineer in person. It's such a virtual world.
Wow.
All
Yeah.
of our stuff had been done just kind of as a band as we operate. We live in different countries from each other, so we record and send stuff back and forth. And when we
Sure.
can, we get together and do a recording session. But we'd
Yeah.
never done it with our mix engineer because we've always just said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" and send it over to him. So this time we actually went to his studio and decided to record some tracks there, and that just kind of gave it a little life, changed things, a little bit of scenery, and it was a cool experience. So there was
Nice.
that, and beyond that, the I think we really focused on a little bit more on the relatable part and making some of the tones that we're bringing in, maybe we're a little bit more varied. So we're trying different stuff from the experimentation, but maybe more in the sense of, well, okay, what might it be like if we, try to make this thing a little bit synthwave, or
Yeah.
On the last song, the AI-driven one, we were like, "We've never tried looping anything. How does that work?" So we just started
Yeah,
playing around and going, "Well, that bit's good. Throw it over there. That sounds like a chorus."
nice. Well, so you say that, but obviously the experimentation and the trying new things, but me just like as a non-biased listener, I still feel that the record is cohesive. Like it still
Thank you.
very much has like a front to back listen quality about it where I'm not saying there aren't standout singles, but at the same time it flows kind of effortlessly from start to finish. And I don't know if that, recording this was like, yeah, this is the type of record that needs to be, but in my opinion, I think that ended up happening.
Thank you. I really wanna say it was just genius. But in
Listen,
all
you
actuality,
can,
it
you
was
can, and I'll say, yeah,
lots of
man, totally.
it was a lot of happy
That's right.
accident.
Sure, sure.
I like puzzles. I tend to think about writing songs and lyrics kind of like a puzzle.
Yeah,
So I'm working on trying to figure stuff out. But you hear from a lot of songwriters that there's this little bit of, like tuning in and channeling it from the ether. So there
yeah,
is always that little bit of magic where, you've got, for me, I often will write the music first. And we don't have lyrics. Maybe we have a phrase or something, but
yeah,
we don't know what the song is. So it's only after having played it a whole bunch of times during tracking that, you'll find yourself brushing your teeth and you're going da 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 and disassociation. Wait,
totally.
what's
I mean,
that?
listen, I think at the same time, because you've listened to the songs obviously more than anyone else has, deep down subconsciously for everyone who's recording on it, like you're not going to put out something so sonically different that it's like, well, let's put out a hip hop song on this thing. Like that's not what you're doing. I think deep down it kind of comes where like you just start making the music and it happens the way it happens.
I think it does. Then within that time period of when you're focusing on it, you're very much in
Yeah,
that moment. So there are carryovers from one to the next. You might be trying
sure.
different stylistic elements, but there is a little bit of that moment that kind of falls into it. And by
Yeah,
not like being one of those records where we started it and then shelved it and came back 20 years later,
right.
you're finding that, it is really much a product of those times. I know that when we first started working with our mix engineer, John, it was the first record after COVID, and we'd written something called Catacomb Songs, which was very much a reaction to, man, we've been locked up for too long. And
Right. Yeah.
when we got to the
Yeah.
cozy mystery one, well, that was because while we were locked up, we watched a lot of cozy mysteries. It was like we watch parties with the band. And in case everybody doesn't know cozy mysteries, it's just mysteries where it's going to get solved and isn't that fun. And for some reason, I just love British ones, so we watched a lot of British mysteries.
Nice.
Which Jack was partial to anyway. So we did all that, but it was really at that point we were like, okay, well, let's get back to basics. Remember when we used to rock? We just decided, we're gonna make a concept album, but let's try to
Right.
take ourselves out of all that and do something a little bit fresher.
I
So that
understand.
was kind of relieved.
I guess that totally makes sense. I do have to ask though, so technically the record is 9 songs long, but the last 2 are bonus tracks. So why do you think you added them as bonus tracks as opposed to just like putting them in the proper record? Is there an answer for that?
Yeah, right. That's a great question. When we first started releasing stuff, it was always just the tracks that were made up the EP. And then at a certain point, somebody suggested to us, well, why don't you record a cover? And, I was always reluctant to do it because it seems to me like cover bands, for all the crap they get, have the hardest time of them all. Because if I play my song, you might know how it goes. But if I mix it up,
Oh,
you go,
yeah,
wow, he's artistic. But if you play the cover and you do it wrong, you miss that little riff that everybody knows they're waiting for, they'll hate
very
you for
true.
that.
Yes.
So when we were like, we're gonna go do a cover, we're like, well, let's do one where we know it pretty well and see what we can do to make it be something that's a little bit different from what they could have already played.
Yeah,
And what we found exciting about doing it was that despite our best intentions, it always ended up kind of sounding like us. We were like, we pour it all in there. We know it's their stuff. We're
I
just
mean,
playing it.
yeah,
But when we get done, it sounds like it's our song and it's not. So we were like, well, listen, we know we've got to credit the writers. It's not our song. But it
sure.
also is just kind of a bonus, it's just something we did while we were recording as kind of as a
Yep.
break in between writing. So it became a bonus track. And for the next several records, that's what we would do. The bonus track was always going to be a cover, and every so often there'd be a bonus track of somebody else doing a remix. We had Stuart Epps of you know, Oasis and George
Oh,
Harrison and Fame like did a remix of one of our tracks, and we put that as a bonus track, and it was just
nice.
cool to hear the difference. So we
Yeah.
did that for a little bit, and then this time something unusual happened. There was a song "Find Me a Place," and it was the first one recorded for this. We were like, well, let's try to do a little tongue-in-cheek Rolling Stones country rock.
Nice.
So we got as country as we felt like we could conceivably do for an alt rock band, and out came "Find Me a Place." And we were like, "Well, isn't that fun?" And then we wrote the rest of the album, and we were like, well, "That thing doesn't work." So we are like, "I
I
like the
mean, yeah,
song, but I can't put it in that sequence and make it make sense."
sure.
So we threw it as a bonus track instead of a remix. So that one's actually us. Now the other one, "Not Dead Yet," that was a cover, and we were so glad to be able to record that. But it was just another one of those covers that we did. It's
Yeah.
Lord Huron track.
No, listen, that's the answer that I was looking for because I wonder, like, well, is it seven? Is it nine? Is it not? But there we go.
It's
I guess
probably a
sort
little
of, yeah,
pretentious, but I'm partial to the
doesn't
number seven.
matter. It doesn't matter. The more music, the better. In like a similar vein of follow-up to that is like, so this record is fresh. It just came out last month.
Yeah.
And, did you only have these songs ready to go, or are there demos that could potentially be on future records?
I think we have this kind of weird thing where like we will brainstorm up a track, work on a couple riffs, maybe write a scratch of lyrics here and there, but they end up like fragments. We never get as far as having a track that's completely made and sitting there,
Sure,
because at a certain point we figure if it's worth it, we're going to finish it up. And that comes from like a some interview I saw with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys somewhere, where he was just like, if you start something, you really have to finish it because
yeah,
otherwise you lose that moment. And when you come back to it, it's never going to be the same, if you even
true.
come back to it. Which I thought was interesting, particularly with the Beatles now and then. But for our perspective, we wanted to be able to put the best into it, but we sit with that track and keep working it until it stops sucking. So we'll start with something we're like, that's all right, but no, and we
Hey,
just keep working it until
I
we're like,
appreciate the
okay, this
honesty.
one's okay.
Listen, the honesty, I think as like recording music, you have to be honest with yourself. If no
I
one's
think
speaking
so.
up, then you have an album of crap and no one wants that.
Well,
So
that's true, and we're so indie, we can't afford that either.
no, it's true. No, 100% true. Like, and for me at least, like I would prefer a shorter record that is all quality instead of just like, here's a 20-song record with 13 filler songs because I wanted more streams on it. Like, especially for an indie band
It's
who
true.
you have to make an impression right off the bat. It's like smaller is
Yeah.
better, 100%.
Well, particularly like when you're trying to catch on, like there's not a
Yeah,
lot of room for play.
no,
There's not a lot of artistic indulgence I get to do.
I
So,
get it.
I will indulge ourselves a little. There's some fun stuff that
Sure.
we integrate, but there's that
Yeah,
limit of it. We're not going over 4.5 minutes.
perfect. I got a couple more for you. I want to
Sure.
know, is there anything important about this record that I guess you haven't mentioned that you think is important for anyone who's about to listen?
Well, I always tend to think that at least rock music works best when you can decide what importance it has to you. We're just trying to get you to dance a little, tap your
Yeah,
foot, something that lets you whistle the tune. That's us doing our job. Now
sure.
we're working at some deeper topics. Maybe we add some deeper lyrics here and there. So yeah, it's got some meaning to us when we're doing it. We hope it has some meaning to you. I purposely write with like multiple meanings when I'm
Yeah,
phrasing things, with the idea that you might interpret your own meaning from different stuff. But there are elements in it that had different you know, more gravitas sort of moments for ourselves. Like,
yeah,
I know that Story. Let's see. No, it wasn't. Scared of Changing actually was a song that I wrote when I was. I always write the music first, but in this case, I took a crack at writing lyrics first.
Nice.
Whenever I do that, they almost always sound like limericks. But I was watching a Tom Petty documentary on wildflowers while flying to the
Nice.
recording sessions in Albuquerque, and those sessions almost got delayed for a while because my wife had had a biopsy, and we were waiting for the results. But she's a tough cookie and a positive minded sort, and she's just like,
Nice.
"Look, you've already booked this thing. Go.
That's
Don't
nice.
reschedule this all for this. There's nothing
Yeah,
else is going to happen while we're waiting."
true.
So while I was watching Wildflowers and thinking about this up in the air, out came some lyrics, and I thought, remember the part of the central tenet to what we're writing is it's got to be relatable, and there's got to be an element of truth. So Scared of Changing was entirely inspired from my meaning,
Nice.
from the idea that we had some degree of uncertainty for my wife's health. And, I was scared of changing. And I think everybody is, and that was the relatable part.
That's a huge
So,
change, though, a huge potential change.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So we got into the studio and I just had the lyrics and we just kind of played around with them in between sessions. We didn't actually record much while we were there on it. But, it started percolating from all of that. And
Yeah.
when it came out, we actually had it all written, and yeah, I think it's from the mindset where I first started writing it. It was like a Leonard Cohen sort of thing where, like,
Nice.
I was kind of gravelly voiced, and like, isn't this a little bit sad? Maybe
Yeah,
maybe,
of
but
course.
melodic. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, I don't like things without a beat. What if we went a little synthwave with this?
Yeah.
So we started adding in some keyboard parts, and I contracted out a female vocalist to add on one of those ambient sort of vocals in the background, and it paired nicely with what we were doing. So we just kind of started dropping out some of my vocals and layering them in and doing various overdubs until it became a sort of a different song. And in the end, it ended up, I think, a little bit more uplifting than it started.
Yeah, I would say so. Nice. Um, listen, the last thing I want to know is there any, I guess, band specific news that you'd like to share? Anything on the horizon or coming up?
you know, um, We get asked that a lot. I think we've been talking a little bit about doing, a little bit of a theater tour, trying to find some places to be able to go to where
Sure.
we get a little bit of a smaller crowd, a little history, and wouldn't that be fun? We've been doing a lot of promotion for this album. I think from one thing or another, perhaps some sense of why it's just me here right now. I've had the thought that maybe I might try to my hand at recording a little bit of a solo album to try to do some
Yeah,
things a little bit different from what we do as the band. Take a
sure.
little break with that, and then come back with some fresh ideas. Because I don't think we want to do another concept album, but I said that last time, so who the hell knows?
I mean, I get it.
But we'll
Listen, if
definitely
you
come
have,
back.
yeah, if you have ideas that don't fit the mold of the band, then just record them yourself. No one's going to stop
I just
you.
want to try something different. So I think that might
Absolutely.
be something that's on the horizon too. But
Very cool.
we haven't talked about it formally, so
That's
maybe this
okay.
breaks it to them.
Maybe. Maybe. Listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. Let me please
Thank you. It's
plug
a
the
pleasure.
record for you before we wrap up here. So for everyone that missed
Thank you.
it, the album is called The Waking Giant. The band is Winchester 7 and the Runners. As always, we'll have the links in our articles that you can listen and share and follow along, maybe even for a potential solo album. We'll see. But really though, I appreciate you taking the time. I do.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
A
Cool. All
pleasure.
right. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your night. We'll talk soon.
You too.
All
Thank
right. Take
you.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.